When I was a kid, Lord of the Rings just aired in the cinemas, and I remember that from that moment onward, I was fascinated by fantasy, and I spent years after that daydreaming about building my own fantastical world just like Middle-earth. But the more I started to learn about writing, the less I actually wanted to write. Everyone was overwhelming me with dozens upon dozens of different rules and formulas and checklists, like your side characters need 2 traits, add X amount of action scenes in this part of the hero's journey, etc, etc. All of that was very overwhelming, and I felt anxious just attempting to write, and because of those things I actually gave up on writing. But the dream of making my own fantasy world never vanished. However, I knew that if I want to write, something dramatic needs to change, and so I decided to go back to the source of my fascination with fantasy, to Tolkien. And I realized that Tolkien never actually followed any of those rules that those writing gurus were telling me to do. The way Tolkien wrote his stories was completely different. And in today's video, I will show you one single advice that you actually need to write stories without feeling anxious and without writer's block. So what is this secret formula? What is this one rule to completely change the way you view writing stories? It's very simple. Write like you're telling someone what really happened. What? This is so vague. T, what do you actually mean by that? Thank you, convenient strawman, for asking exactly the question I need to continue the script. Let me answer that question with another question. When you are telling a story of something that happened to you in real life, do you think about the themes of that story? Do you think about the character traits of people that appear in that story that you're talking about? Do you think about what is the current stage of the hero's journey in that story? No, obviously not, right? So why do you tell that story to someone? Was it because the story is just fascinating for you? Maybe it changed your mind about something or someone? Maybe it made you laugh, maybe it made you sad, maybe it made you angry with someone or something. Whatever it is, you felt a very big urge to tell that story to someone, that's why you told it. And that is exactly how you start writing fictional stories. You want to tell a story where this and that happened, just because. You don't need to invent some themes and obsess over them, or think about what is the deep philosophical question that my story will tackle on. You don't need to do any of this. You can, if you want to, but you don't need to. And the first question that you will obviously have is, how do I actually do that? Because these stories don't exist. I need to make them up. Contrary to stories that actually happen, so you don't need to think about them. Now let me give you an infinite idea generation glitch. Get bored. Every single time throughout all of my life, I had the most creative, exciting ideas when I was really bored. And not only ideas about stories, about literally anything, because my mind just wanted to find anything to do. When I was a kid in the late 90s and early 2000s Poland, I was traveling a lot with my parents by car, and there was no technology to keep me occupied. No smartphones, no nothing. I also couldn't play with my toys because I had motion sickness when I was not looking outside the window of the car. And now, what do you do as a lonely, single kid stuck in a car for 4 or 5 hours and nothing to do? You daydream. You look outside the window and you see things happening outside. You imagine a big battle if you are traveling through some kind of field, or if you are inside the city, you imagine something else, like you see dragons flying in the sky, because your mind is trying to find ideas because you are so incredibly bored. Now, after many years has passed, I'm still daydreaming when I am getting really bored. But right now it's not in the car, it's in the gym, because I go to the gym every single day and it became a routine for me, and I'm getting really bored because I'm doing exactly the same exercises every single time. And that is the time I get most of my ideas, is during exercise. Even the idea for this specific video, I came up in the gym because I realized that I have an explosion of different ideas when I am doing exercises, and I was like, that's an interesting thought, I should make a video about that. Okay, so those are the ideas for stories. What about characters now? There's a couple of very, very simple ways to not overthink and still create really believable characters. One of them is just write someone you know. This is such an effective idea that gives you an entire template for a character that feels believable, because now, for example, you will never overthink what that person would do in a certain situation in your fictional story, because, well, you know that person. You can imagine what they would do, and if not, you can always just ask them. And what if you're a little nerd reclusive who sits all day in his cave and don't actually meet people and don't speak with anyone? Then get outside and get to know people, get to know places. One of the most important things that you can do as a writer is to be present. Present each time you go outside, you experience the world and you speak with people. You want to write about someone? Well, go outside and meet that someone. And even if you want to write someone that you cannot really meet in real life, let's say you want to write a great general of an army, like obviously it's difficult to just speak with a general of an army. Well, then learn about those people. Find some memoirs or some generals from, I don't know, the Vietnam War and the war in Iraq, and watch some podcasts of those people, talking, and try to understand that person. Where did he come from? Why does he think this way and why not that way? And try not to be judgmental. Try to understand why. And that also works with much smaller characters. Let's say you want to write a local merchant in your fantasy town. Well, then go outside and go to your local grocery store. Go talk to the lady that works there. Ask her some questions, do some small talk. And remember to be present when she answers you, to try to understand her worldview, why she tells you those things, and her demeanor, if she laughs or not, all those small things. And then when you go back home, just write that character in your story that acts exactly like this. I can't stress how creative this process is and how alive characters feel, because they are based on real people. Actually, there is a good example where a writer doesn't understand what he's writing about. Bethesda recently released the video game Starfield. The lead designer behind this game was Emil Pagliarulo. What the hell? And he, as he said himself,
I grew up a good Catholic boy, and
now if you go to any nightclubs in this game, you will see that, yeah, he probably was a good Catholic boy, because he don't really know how nightclub feel. They are generic, bland, the music there is completely forgettable, and clearly done by someone who has never been in a nightclub. Contrary to this, the creators of Fallout New Vegas went out of their way and visited places that they would write in their story. They wanted to immerse themselves and the player in the places that they would create, and now Fallout New Vegas is one of the most critically acclaimed RPG ever for its immersive storytelling. This is also something that I complimented one of my clients on when I was reviewing his work. In one of his chapters he wrote, "These were the type of faces that held their losing hand askew. The kind who did not bother to swallow before speaking." This was such a small thing, but at the same time it was grounding the scene and allowing it to be more immersive and true to life. And that was the moment I immediately knew that he, as a writer, he actually exercised that way. If you also want to work with me on your story and the aspects that you think are holding you back, you can check the first link in the description down below. And yeah, this is the only rule that you need to stop feeling anxious and overthink about 5,000 different rules when trying to write your story. Just tell a story that feels like a story that you will tell that happened to you like 2 weeks ago, or something dramatic, if your story is dramatic, that happened to you 10 years ago that completely changed the person that you are. That is why writers are like bottles of wine. The older they get, the more refined they are, mostly because they experience more life. And you can have a crazy life and still not experience it much, because you might not be present during those times. That is why whenever you go outside and you talk with anyone, you network with people, socialize, speak with anyone, and do anything, try to be present, try to understand why those things are happening, what is the relations between those people, why they are the way they are, etc., etc. This will completely change the way you see the world as a writer and stories as a writer. And yeah, that is all for today, and well, see you next week.